أصوركم. Where are you from?
شكرا.
الجزائر.
تونس.
I am from
يمن.
Palestine. غزة.
فلسطين غزة.
Yes.
الله ينصر اخواننا.
يا
الله ينصركم
يا رب يا رب.
غزة. غزة. غزة.
يا رب.
ان شاء الله ربي معاك.
الله ينصر غزة.
يا رب.
الله ينصر ان شاء الله ربي معاك.
الله ينصر فلسطين. الله ينصر فلسطين. اخواننا في غزة.
بارك الله فيك. بارك الله فيك. كنا نحبكم كثير.
Dad, why was Granddad crying?
Son, it is very complicated, but I must tell you, because your future is involved.
Grandson, it started way back in time, BC, before the birth of the Christ child.
What I am about to tell you is about a conflict that has been raging for centuries, because of the difference of religion and culture. It takes place on one piece of land, Israel. The Holy Land, which hosts the Temple Mount, which also hosts Al-Aqsa Mosque, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and the Wailing Wall. The debate over who controls the Temple Mount has been raging and creating tension for centuries. Since the days of the Crusades, 1187 CE, Muslims in Jerusalem have controlled and managed the Temple Mount, where Al-Aqsa Mosque worships. 2000 to 1700 BCE, Abraham, spiritual founder of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, was born in southern Mesopotamia. The Bible refers to him as Abram and later Abraham. The Quran refers to him as Ibrahim. Abraham's wife, Sarah, unable to have a child, tells him to conceive a child with their Egyptian servant, Hagar, and Ishmael, the first son of Abraham, is born. Founder of the Muslim faith, Genesis 15:5, look toward heaven, and number the stars, if you are able to number them, God said to Abraham, so shall your offspring be. Genesis 21:13. I will also make the son of your slave into a nation. The Muslim nation, I will do it because Ishmael is your child. So, Abraham sent Ishmael and his mother Hagar away. She went on her way and wandered in the desert of Beersheba.
That this day will be the last, and tomorrow we all can go home free, and all this will finally end. Palestine, tomorrow will be free. I saw those rockets and bombs shining in the sky, like drops of rain in the sun's light, taking away everyone dear to my heart, destroying my dreams in a blink of an eye. What happened to our the sanctity of life and all rights? What happened to the sanctity of life and all those other lives? I know that I'm only a child, but is your conscience still alive?
Judaism originated with the biblical patriarch, Abraham, approximately 1800 BCE. Abraham established a covenant with God that was confirmed with the reception of the Torah, the law including the Ten Commandments, from God. Through Moses to the Jewish people at Mount Sinai approximately 3,320 years ago. The primary figures of Israelite culture include the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the prophet Moses, who received God's Torah at Mount Sinai. Abraham, the founder of the Hebrew people, is said to have migrated to Canaan.
I saw those rockets and bombs shining in the sky, like drops of rain in the sun's light, taking away everyone dear to my heart, destroying dreams in a blink of an eye. What happened to our human rights? What happened to the sanctity of life and all those other lives? I know that I'm only a child, but is your conscience still alive?
Today's modern Jewish groups, whether Orthodox, Conservative, or Reform, all claim direct spiritual descent from the Pharisees. Bible verse Matthew 23, Jesus condemns the scribes and Pharisees for their hypocrisy. Mediterranean cultures throughout the biblical period and later ages. From Canaan, the Hebrew ancestors of the people of Israel, named after the patriarch Jacob, also called Israel, migrated to Egypt, where they lived in servitude. A few generations later they returned to occupy part of Canaan. Although the Pharisees were hypocrites towards lower classes, there are practicing Jewish minorities throughout the world. American Indians, Japanese, Asians, East Indians, Somalians, Nigerians, Ethiopian, Beth Israel, Africans, all Jews and descendants of the Canaanites Pharisees. Genesis 12:3. And God said, I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed.
I will caress with my bare hands every precious grain of sand, every stone, and every...
Genesis 25:19. Jacob, the son of Isaac and Rebekah, also called Israel by God, one of the founders of Israel. The nation was named after him, and the 12 tribes that make up Israel were named after Jacob's sons. God said to him, I am God Almighty, be fruitful and increase in number. A nation and a community of nations will come from you, and kings will come from your body. Jacob begat Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Jesus, who is called Christ. Joseph descended from David through his son Solomon.
Palestine, tomorrow will be free. Palestine, tomorrow will be free.
Islam was founded in the early 7th century by the Prophet Muhammad. He lived from 570 to 632 and was born in Mecca. Islam comes from the word al-Silm and istaslama, which means peace and surrender. The God in Islam is referred to as Allah, which in Arabic means the God or the deity. A person who believes and practices the religion of Islam is called a Muslim. Muhammad met and married Khadijah in 595 CE. When Muhammad was 40 years old, he began hearing voices and seeing visions of divine angels. To better understand these visions he would go to Mount Hira and meditate. At Medina, the first mosque was built, and Muhammad and his followers would pray facing east towards Mecca. In 622, Muhammad, along with his family and followers, became persecuted for their beliefs and had to flee Mecca. The flight from Mecca to Medina is called the Hijra. In 610, the archangel Gabriel appeared to him and told him that there was only one God, Allah, and he had chosen him as a prophet. Muhammad believed he was the last and greatest in a series of prophets along with Abraham, Moses, and Jesus. During this time, the pagans in Mecca tried to go to war with the Muslims in Medina. After several battles the Muslims defeated the pagans, and in 629 Muhammad returned to Mecca with 1,500 converts and took control of the city.
that this day will be the last, and tomorrow we all can go home free, and all this will finally end. Palestine, tomorrow will be free. Palestine, tomorrow will be free.
4 BCE, Jesus of Nazareth is born. Jesus is the central figure of Christianity and is considered to be the Son of God. Muslims also recognize the importance of Jesus, but as a prophet, not the Son of God. Jesus was a Jew whose father was a carpenter in the Galilean village of Nazareth. The New Testament Gospels and the Quran state that Jesus had a miraculous birth. His mother, Mary, became pregnant by the power of God. In his late 20s Jesus began a career of teaching and healing. Most of his teachings were about the coming of the kingdom of God and about personal humility before other humans and God. When Jesus was about 32, he was crucified in Jerusalem. The Jewish administration and the crowd pressured Pontius Pilate to crucify Jesus Christ. According to Christian belief, Jesus rose from the dead after 3 days, visited his disciples, and then ascended into heaven. During the Roman Empire, Jesus of Nazareth began preaching a message of love and forgiveness. Christianity developed in Judea in the mid-1st century CE, based first on the teachings of Jesus and later on the writings and missionary work of Paul of Tarsus. Genesis 10, 1-20. The Arabs, Hamites, Canaanites, and Jebusites were the original inhabitants of the land of Palestine, including the area of Jerusalem. Jebusites and Canaanites were there long before the Israelites, at least 2,000 years before. Israel first appears near the end of the 13th century BC, within the Egyptian Mereniptah stele, contains the first and only accepted reference to Israel in ancient Egyptian records, referring apparently to a people and not a place, inhabiting in Canaan. Please note the exodus of the people of Israel, under the leadership of Moses, took place in the 13th century. The Old Testament, Exodus 20.
The word Palestine derives from Philistia, a name given by the Greek to the land of Philistine, who in the 12th century before Christ era, BCE, occupied the southern coast, between modern-day Tel Aviv, Yaffo, and Gaza. Generations after generations, Galilee was located in the Holy Land, which is referred to as ancient Palestine and Eretz Yisrael, land of Israel, according to scholars. In Jesus' time, ancient Palestine was a part of the Canaan region.
When Jesus the Christ was born, the Romans invaded the lands of Palestine in 63 BC, and took over the city. The mandatory authorities agreed to a compromise regarding a Hebrew name. The English name was Palestine, but the Hebrew version, also included in the acronym, N, for Eretz Yisrael, Land of Israel. The acronym Eretz Yisrael was placed on all official documents, currency, stamps etc. After becoming part of the Persian Empire, The Philistines lost their distinct ethnic identity and disappeared as a people from the historical and archaeological record by the late 5th century BCE. The Philistines were known for their biblical conflict with the Canaanite peoples of the region, in particular the Israelites. When the Israelites had finally settled into Canaan, they had to contend with the Philistines. These two nations constantly fought against one another. The major reason that the Philistines and the Israelites constantly had strife was because of their differing religious beliefs. The Philistines primarily believed in Dagon and the Israelites believed in Yahweh or God. These two gods were nothing alike. And this religious difference played out in the lives of the Philistines and the Israelites, informing their cultures and shaping their lives. Another major reason as to why the Philistines resented the Israelites is because they had conquered so many people when they entered into Canaan under Joshua's leadership. The Philistines were a powerful and warlike people, and they disliked the idea of the Israelites gaining more power.
No mother, no father to wipe away my tears. That's why I will cry. I feel scared, but I won't show my fears. I keep my head high, deep in my heart. I never have any doubt that Palestine tomorrow will be free. Palestine tomorrow will be free.
According to Genesis 10, every human being are descendants from Noah and at least one of his 3 sons, Shem, ancestor of the Semites, Ham, ancestor of the Africans, and Japheth, ancestor of the Europeans. Ham, Hebrew, meaning hot or black, was Noah's second son. Ham and his wife had 4 sons who became the fathers of the nation of Africa. Ham's 4th son Canaan was prophetically cursed, because he gazed at his father's nakedness, when he was drunk. Genesis 9:26, and he said, "Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant." Genesis 9:27, God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. It is believed, based on the Bible, that Canaan, modern-day Palestine, was cursed because of their sinful ways, worshipping false gods, human sacrifice, the building of the Tower of Babel, Sodom and Gomorrah, and sexual immorality.
The sky, like drops of rain in the sun's light, taking away everyone dear to my heart, destroying my dreams in a blink of an eye. What happened to our human rights? What happened to the sanctity of life and all those other lives? I know that I'm only a child, but is your conscience still alive?
In 1897, the first Zionist organization is founded by Theodor Herzl, in Basel, Switzerland. In 1901, the Jewish National Fund is established to purchase land in Palestine. In 1909, Tel Aviv is built by Jews. In 1917, the Balfour Declaration is established by the British, to help create a national home for the Jews in Palestine. Although the document promises not to prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, the Arabs perceive the Balfour Declaration as an act of dishonesty. July 24, 1992. The League of Nations issued a mandate to Britain to establish a national home for Jewish people in Palestine. 1947, UN proposes the establishment of Arab and Jewish states in the land. 1948, end of British mandate, 14th of May. State of Israel proclaimed, 14th of May. 1995, broadened Palestinian self-government implemented in West Bank and Gaza Strip, Palestinian Council elected.
Intent here was to keep Israelis indoors, to distract from the invasion. Others attacking border points and fence lines, all while thousands of rockets rained down. Others using boats. Meanwhile, on the ground, hundreds of Hamas fighters poured across breached border points. smashing Israel's defenses. Israel responded at first with mass airstrikes inside densely packed Gaza, where residential buildings and Hamas outposts are often one and the same. By late Saturday, Israel was moving tanks and other equipment which could be used in a ground invasion of Gaza towards the border, while continuing its targeting from above. What is coming now may well be on a scale unseen in a generation.
How did it get to this? It's a conflict lasting 100 if not 1,000 years over land, who lives on it and who controls it, in a part of the world where holy sites and religious landmarks are everywhere. You could choose any point in history to try to begin to explain the wider conflict, but to try to understand what's happened in the last 2 weeks, you could do worse than start by looking at the early 2000s.
An Israel-Palestine two-state settlement, that almost came off in 2000.
In 2007, Hamas cemented power in Gaza. Israel, along with Egypt, imposed a permanent blockade.
Its land, sea and air borders are all tightly controlled. So essentially, nothing goes in or out, goods or people, or it's very severely restricted.
All of a sudden,
what they want is simply to expand settlements. They were saying it was given to the Jews by God, and therefore the Palestinians in the West Bank should be either expelled or live with citizens without rights, without political rights.
Their horror was brewing.
it's different this time because Hamas decides we're going to go in and we're going to make a show of this in terms of what we can do to the Israelis. They go into the civilian settlements. They go into the kibbutzim, they go into gatherings such as the music festival, and they carry out mass murder. And we need to call this out for what it is.
The Hamas military plan was called Al-Aqsa Floods, after the mosque in Jerusalem.
It was an intelligence failure, a military failure. People were hiding in shelters and crying for help, and the military did not arrive.
Israel, a state built on projecting strength to hostile neighbours, has been rattled, and the world has been horrified. Israel cut power and water supplies to Gaza, bombed hundreds of locations, levelling buildings and killing civilians. Organisations like Médecins Sans Frontières say hospitals in Gaza are overwhelmed. UN officials say an unprecedented humanitarian catastrophe is unfolding before our eyes. In this conflict, getting to any agreed position has been difficult, but the absence of any such agreement is daily cutting short people's lives.
Didn't know it, but Gaza is rich, gas rich, at least 1.4 trillion cubic feet rich to be precise. But there's a catch.
Geologists and natural resources economists have confirmed that the occupied Palestinian territory lies above sizable reservoirs of oil and natural gas wealth in Area C of the occupied West Bank and the Mediterranean coast off the Gaza Strip. To date, the real and opportunity costs of the occupation exclusively in the area of oil and natural gas have accumulated to tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars.
On June 18 of this year, Netanyahu announced Israel's plans to develop Gaza's maritime gas field. 4 months after this announcement, Israel launched its unprecedented assault on Gaza on October 8. But the Western media should have seen this coming, given Israel has a history of telegraphing its true motives for laying siege on the Palestinian territory, like it did in 2014, when an Israeli defense minister confirmed that Israel's 2014 war on Gaza, which killed 2,200 Palestinians, was motivated by a desire to dominate Gaza's gas reserves. Dr. Nafiz Ahmed explains here.
What's happened recently is, over the last 6-7 years or so, increasingly it seems that Israel's energy issues have become more pronounced. Its repeated military incursions into Gaza appear to have been linked very much to the interest in dominating and exploiting these offshore reserves in Gaza. Now, there have been many efforts by Israel to come to some kind of an arrangement with its favoured parties, namely the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, run by Fatah, and kind of ride roughshod over Hamas, which is seen as an entity that they just simply cannot negotiate with under any circumstances.
Israel has blocked Palestinians in Gaza from accessing its maritime reserves and fisheries, which denies them desperately needed revenues to improve their devastated economy, because as it stands, 80% of Palestinian residents are dependent on international aid for survival, with the unemployment rate hovering around 50%. It's simply an indisputable fact that Israel's current aerial and ground assault and its subsequent plan to reoccupy and control the territory is motivated by a desire to permanently separate Palestinians from their rightful natural resources by ousting Hamas and replacing it with its reliable lapdog, the Palestinian Authority.
This wealth should benefit the Palestinian people. Each field is estimated to bring $50 billion to the strategic reserve. This may change the bad economic reality of Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, and it will adjust the rates of public treasury and the public budget and contribute to improving development budgets. Look, there are two of these fields just before us at sea.
Since the field was discovered in 2000, Israel denied Palestinians access to the Gaza Maritime Zone, preventing fishing and recreational use beyond 6 nautical miles from the coast.
Now, as you can see from the way that Israel rejected a ceasefire for hostages deal, and how Israel is now claiming Gaza as its own territory, this genocidal siege was never about Hamas. It was only ever about resource theft and extraction from the Palestinian territories, like it was in 1967, like it is now with Israeli soldiers claiming new Jewish outposts in Gaza, and like it was 9 years ago when Israel began stealing oil from the occupied West Bank. And we're not only talking about the theft and dispossession of land, oil and gas, but also water. Israel steals water from the occupied Palestinian territories and then sells it back to the Palestinians, but at a price much higher than ordinary Israeli citizens are made to pay, while also giving Palestinians access to only 73 litres of water per day at the same time it allocates 4 times as much water to Israelis. Today, Israel weaponizes water to force Palestinian farmers from their lands and to pave the way for more illegal Jewish settlements in the occupied West Bank.
Rights groups say Israel uses water to control Palestinians and force them from their land.
Since 1967, Israel has controlled pretty much all the water west of the Jordan River, and that has had dire consequences for Palestinians. The Washington Post recently reported that one of the world's oldest cities, Jericho, could see its famous bananas go extinct. That's because Palestinian farmers don't have access to enough water to feed their crops. Added to that has been the demolition of dozens of wells and other irrigation systems by Israel.
Under Israeli military orders, Palestinians are banned from drilling new water wells, installing pumps or deepening existing wells. Israel even controls the collection of rainwater throughout most of the West Bank, and rainwater harvesting cisterns owned by Palestinian communities are often destroyed by the Israeli army. As a result, some 180 Palestinian communities in rural areas in the occupied West Bank have no access to running water. But illegal Jewish settlers enjoy all the fresh running water they desire, of course. So when you understand how Israel controls and dominates every aspect of Palestinian life and resources, it's easy to see why control and domination of Gaza's $1 trillion gas reserves are at the forefront of Israel's mind as it bombs and invades the Palestinian territory.